Hello, lovelies. I just wrote a Substack, and for those of you that only listen to me, I thought it might be worthwhile to turn it into a podcast as well. As you know, we have the Magical Egypt Summit coming up, and as a result of that, we have some incredibly interesting people doing some incredibly interesting research. And I kind of got a surprise guest that I wasn't even aware of. I had asked my friend Leo Walton, who is an author and researcher himself, to do a talk in the summit for us. And he surprised me with bringing on two guests. And I'm going to talk about one of them today because I'm yet to find out the details on the second person's talk. But I have a feeling that's going to be just as interesting. So I'm going to back up for a minute and tell you something that I researched way, way back in the beginning of Magical Egypt and how the cycles repeat and the information comes back again. So back in the early days when Chance and I just met, we had the pleasure of going to London and to meet the fabulously famous Jean-Michel. Now, I had been aware of him because I had his book, New View over Atlantis. And it's a really, really interesting book. You may think that he's actually talking about Atlantis, but it's not so much Atlantis. He's using that as a means to refer to the pre-Diluvian civilization, the people that John Anthony West referred to as the place of great knowledge and information that resulted in them being able to do the amazing feats. And Plato refers to it as Atlantis, but I'm not sure he actually meant it as Atlantis per se, more as a time and space. And what Jean-Michel was looking at is the geography of the planet and specifically the ley lines, the energy lines that run through the planet. And what John was suggesting is that while we believe that the structure of the geography of Earth is a result of mountains and earthquakes and plates, tectonic plates crashing up and against each other, that he believed that he found evidence that the whole thing was geoengineered, that there is a master plan for the geography of planet Earth. And his arguments made a lot of sense. So then some years later, I meet Thomas Joseph Brown, one of the most brilliant researchers. He used to run the Borderlands Institute, so he was kind of a epicenter for all kinds of interesting and crazy information. And he turned me onto a book called The Star Mirror by Mark Vidler. Now, we all know when you look at the temples of ancient Egypt and Stonehenge and kind of the megalithic constructions that we find around the planet, that they all have these crazy cosmological alignments, okay, on special days of the year. And so while we have become accustomed to that, it still floored me that he also found evidence for these geographical alignments of the highest peaks and mountaintops with the stars in the sky. And also he found, again, these crazy pi and phi relationships and sacred geometry And his measurements are incredibly finite and detailed and to the smallest possible margin of error. And there is enough there for him to build a really significant case that, again, there were hands, civilization, or some intelligence involved in the construction of the Earth's geography. So now we have two of those, and it's kind of blowing me away. Now, I haven't spent a lot of time researching the Americas, to be honest with you. And so I kind of know of the Serpent Mounds, and I know that there was a very intelligent indigenous race there, or at least I've researched that. I've come across that idea. But this young man that Leo said, hey, we're going to have Sean talk to us, is from Washington State in the United States of America. His family have been there for ages and ages and ages. And because of that, he is the beneficiary of a lot of stories that have been handed down through the indigenous people, through his grandfather, his father, to himself. And I'm not completely au fait with the story. I'm going to have to wait to the summit to find out the details. But he spent a few minutes with me, giving me a kind of a taste of some of his discoveries. And while he found pyramids and calendars and all kinds of crazy things, one of the things he did find that kind of captured my attention because of my knowledge with Star Mirror and Jean-Michel is that he has found mountains that map exactly correlations with the stars again. Okay. And the alignments are such that it's crazy, right? It's crazy. And as I said, I've only been introduced to this, so don't sue me if it's wrong, and we'll all learn together at the summit, right? But just a few of the images he sent me and the alignments, and apparently there's a lot more going on, right? But I'm referring to this today. It was just crazy. So I go back to Thomas Joseph Brown and I tell him that, wow, we've got another example of this. And Thomas reminded me, because again, I read this book ages ago, The Star Mirror, that because of the way that we're moving through the universe, these alignments really only happen one time, right? And so the question is, are they pointing to a moment in time that was? Are they pointing to a moment in time in the future? Like, what is all of this astrological, cosmological alignment trying to tell us? And in the Star Mirror book, it seems that the alignments that Mark Vidler found anyway seem to be pointing roughly to somewhere around our time. The date specifically he has is 2080. So hopefully, thankfully, I don't know if I want to be around to see what they're pointing to, right? But I mean, maybe it's something fantastic. Maybe it's the end of time. And you know, when we had that whole 2012 thing and it was like the end of time, I don't know. But it really is kind of fascinating. I think the question is, what exactly was going through the minds of these architects, these geoengineers, these temple builders, these henge builders? Regardless of what you think the technology was that they had at these times, we're still talking fundamentally massive undertakings, whether it be a temple or whether it be the geoengineering of the planet. There's so much that we've lost, and there's so much that we're finding again. I had somebody tell me about the discovery of a crazy tomb today, and I'm not going to talk about it because it's hush hush. But it appears that things that we've been looking for a very long time are being revealed. So despite all the muck in the news, my loves, it is a very exciting time to be alive. So if you want to learn more, check out my Substack and check out New View Over Atlantis by John Michel. And check out, there's 2 books actually by Mark Vidler. They're listed in the Substack. So go have a read and let me know what you think. Things are interesting. More soon.